Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Nothing Like a Good Book. All sorts of people come on board on the show, and we're dedicated to authors. Tell some friends. We'd appreciate it if and if you do enjoy the show, to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'll really help us, and we can help more authors that way. We discover your book if we can. We help promote your book if you want to do that, and hopefully it'll help to selling your book too. So just go to nothinglikeagoodbook.com. Lots of authors there, lots of reviews there as well, and you can see how we can indeed help you. So my guest today, a little different indeed. I'm going to ask you, what does art reveal about who we are? What can art tell us? Well, we're lucky today. We have award-winning author and photographer Brandy Isadora. She's built a creative career exploring one powerful idea, and that is everyone has a story to tell. So as an author and a photographer, Brandy Isadora explores identity through images, stories, and music, all through her books, which we'll talk about through the show. And those books are Telltales, Tattoo Stories and Portraits, the stories of our lives, and mannequins, stories of the first supermodel. And Isadora uses photography and storytelling to uncover the deeper meaning behind identity, self-expression, and the human connection. There you go. It's a hell of a wrap, isn't it? So without further ado, I'm going to welcome young Isabella. Hi there, Brandy.
Hi, thank you for having me on your show today.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Let me push this little one. There we go. Hello, it's working. That's nice to know. So why are you an award-winning author and photographer? What is so good about you, do you think?
Well, I think I like to explore topics that are unusual, controversial at times, and they resonate with people. And so my first book, Tales, Tattoo Stories and Portraits, was a collection of interviews that I did where I interviewed people from different walks of life. And they told me what their tattoos meant and what it meant to be a tattooed individual in their profession. And I think it resonated with a lot of people because, especially with people who don't have tattoos, who wanted to understand why people dedicate their bodies to this new art, or, well, it's not new art, but relatively more modern art.
Well, yeah, every Tom, Dick, and Harry you look at now.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. We've all got tattoos, it seems.
Yeah. And I think people just found it interesting. For example, my parents, before I wrote this book, when they saw a tattooed individual, especially someone who was really covered in ink, they would assume that person led a wild lifestyle, or, they would have an assumption.
Right.
And after I wrote this book, they now are interested in tattoos. They always ask, whenever they meet someone, what does your tattoo mean? Like, now they see it differently. And I think that's why my book got recognition and why it won awards, because it really helped people understand and embrace this art form, which has become so prevalent in society today.
Well, while touring, you have a metal band called Corvus. You began asking a very simple question. Why do people get tattoos? Now, we know that it's, thousands of years old, decoration in various tribes, and all sorts of people, right, throughout history. And then it went through a phase, and then it went through the phase where you can stick them on and take them off. But now, these days, these are fair income tattoos, right? Once they're there, they're there.
Yes, absolutely.
How many do you have?
I have one. It's a tiny little star on my wrist. I actually got it a year ago. And actually, one of the people in my book, I became friends with her. So I had always wanted to get a tattoo. That's partly what inspired this book.
Right.
And she said, okay, Brandy, it's time. You always said you wanted to get a tattoo. We're going. And so I said, I'm starting something small, just to. Yeah,
I noticed you also hid the thing too, just in case.
Right.
Not like some, you got to admit. Tattoo Stories and Portraits, you interviewed and you've photographed people from all walks of life, including doctors, lawyers, artists, all sorts of families. You were gathering stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And were they all good stories? Did they make sense?
They did. Yeah, I don't think there was any story where I couldn't really relate to it. I think there was definitely a theme where the stories revolved around honoring a family member or capturing something that's always had meaning to them, like a flower that, has been symbolic or something that they love.
Right.
So I found the stories quite touching because people generally, I would say, put a lot of thought into what they want to have inked on their bodies.
Right. So I guess in a lot of ways, it's also a memory thing too, isn't it? To keep it there, and you look at somebody, a loved one maybe who's passed, and there's a message. Often I've noticed with the guys, there seems to be a lot of female faces and hair, whether it's girlfriends, mothers. Did you find that in your research when you were doing this?
I did. A lot of men had tattoos that memorialized loved ones or honored, if they were still living.
Right.
Children, yes. And, someone pointed out in one of the interviews, they said, I always get to take my art with me. And I didn't really appreciate that until we saw the fires in California, and a lot of people lost their
everything.
Yeah. And, it really sunk in. These people, they get to have their tattoos for as long as they're alive. And, sometimes that can mean a lot if they survive a natural disaster like that.
Take them with them. Yep. Now, conversely, though, in contrast, your short story collection called The Stories of Our Lives, okay, and this is the book over here, right, because we're talking about 3 books. What was this on? It's a short story collection. Let's have a look. Focusing inwardly on ordinary people whose lives shift in unexpected ways. So for that book, you drew inspiration from real life conversations and personal experiences. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I started writing this book many years ago, around like 14 years ago. And then during COVID, when everything was shut down, I returned to the stories.
Right. What a time that was, huh?
Yeah.
So has this done well for you? What's been the response of this one?
People really love the stories because there's always an element of hope, because I like to show that in life, life is challenging, but with most of the challenges that we face, we get some parting gift from it, whether it's a new skill, a new path, unexpected friendship, a different perspective. Our stories are never over. We never know what's around the corner. And that's a theme that comes up in my stories a lot. And I think that resonates with a lot of the people who have read this collection.
Well, that's it. You never know when the button's going to be pressed, that's for sure. Now, it is quoted, if I'm correct, that you craft thought-provoking stories that highlight moments of transformation. This includes resilience and, as you said, hope, with your artistic curiosity. What is that noise? Extending even further into life itself. I mean, did you start off very young, more music or more writing?
I actually didn't start playing music until I was an adult. So I actually started writing much earlier. I dabbled in it as a child for fun with my best friend, but it was nothing serious or anything like that. I really didn't get into writing seriously until probably shortly after college. And then I dabbled in it, because I was starting a novel at the time, and, that could take a long time. And then someone suggested I go get my master's in creative writing. So it was at that point that really pulled me by the bootstraps, so to speak. And I was, forced to write a lot. And that's when it really just took hold and I found my niche.
Fabulous. It's good that you did find your niche. A lot of people don't, unfortunately. Mannequins, the stories of the first supermodel. A visually striking photography book, this one inspired by your fascination with vintage mannequins discovered in antique shops. That's unusual. Not many people go around looking for that, do they? How do you create these?
This book came out by accident. Many years ago, my friend and I would take road trips in Arizona, and she liked antique stores. So we would go in, and I started seeing these mannequin heads. And I've always found mannequins to be kind of creepy.
Yeah, me too.
But I was in these stores for fun. I just started photographing them. And I had a collection, and then it kind of became a game where wherever we went, I had to find an antique store so I could find mannequins to photograph.
Right.
And sometimes the owners of these antique stores would be like, "Oh, do you want me to bring the mannequin down?" We'd set them up, and it was really cute.
Yeah.
So after a while, I started reading about mannequins, and I realized they had a fascinating history. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to turn this into a book. I think it's interesting, and it takes, now when I look at mannequins, I'm not really creeped out by them because,
right,
I don't know, they have a warm place in my heart. I really.
So I'm trying to get the connection of the very first supermodel.
Mm-hmm.
How does that link there? The mannequin is the first supermodel?
In a way, I would consider them the first supermodel because especially they've been used as far back as we know, ancient Egypt. King Tut had a mannequin in his size, and that's how they would, I don't know if they used it to measure the clothing, but they did find mannequins in his tomb. The other thing is during the Industrial Revolution, that's when stores had storefronts, and they had these huge glass windows. And so they could display the merchandise, and that's when mannequins became very prevalent. So I would say, yes, they were the first supermodel because they were our first, foray into window shopping.
That's right. That's right. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that when I was a little fella, like any normal guy, I used to love when they were dressing them in the windows too. Stunning imagery, engaging insights. You reimagine mannequins as early supermodel. Fair dinkum, he took mannequins to his grave with him, King Tut. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he might have been the very, very first, And once simple displays, figures become symbols of fashion, identity, and society's evolution. Yes, because the mannequins don't change, but the clothing changes, the times change. And they're interesting. They're still there. So there's three of the things, and there we go. They're the big three books, and they're all available on Amazon, are they not?
Correct, yes.
Okay, can all be got on Amazon. Or what's the deal with this? BrandyIsadora.com. What am I going to find on that in my podgies with a cup of joe?
BrandyIsadora.com, that's my website. So in Arizona, I'm a photographer. I do headshots, portraiture. I've done small weddings, but mostly portraits and headshots. So that's where people can view my work and book appointments with me. So that's my day job. The books are what I do.
Right.
Hours.
And the music, that's gone?
No, the music is still here. I play the cello, as you can see behind me. I play with Scottsdale Philharmonic, and we play all year round now. So
very nice. Scottsdale Philharmonic. Hey, she's no idiot, I'll tell you. All three works, Isadora blends visual artistry with storytelling, inviting readers, you, to look deeper at the world around them. So, whether capturing a portrait, crafting a fictional narrative, or photographing a long forgotten mannequin, your work seems to emphasize a shared human experience. Is that the message that you're trying to get across?
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
Okay, all right. Whatever the subject, aren't you always trying to show something that we're more alike than what we'd like to think that we are, perhaps?
Oh, absolutely. I think this world is smaller than it seems at times, especially the art world. And I just like to show that, we're more of a community than we would think sometimes.
You touched on photography, not just local weddings. In fact, you're an accomplished photographer who has been exhibited internationally. Congrats. How did your creative journey take you from fashion design and music into photography and writing?
That's a good question. I found that when you're in the arts, sometimes one thing leads to another. So while I was a handbag designer, I did a lot of photo shoots for marketing campaigns and advertisements. And I found that, after spending a few times in a photo shoot, I thought, well, maybe I could do this.
Yeah.
Money. So I started doing photo shoots and I really enjoyed it. I love the immediacy, how you could see the results so quickly.
Right.
And so when I shut down my fashion business, I decided I wanted to go to graduate school for writing. And so I went to California College of the Arts and got my MFA in creative writing. And I continued the photography, but it was more of a hobby. And then when I graduated and I moved back to Arizona, I started photographing concerts that came through Phoenix for a couple of music magazines. And that just catapulted my photography career. I started doing that. And then I was also playing in bands and started getting hired for portraits and headshots and weddings.
Well, you're certainly not one to sit still, are you? You can't afford to in the arts, can you? You've got to try and go and keep on presenting. Your work, in both images and words is what you're all about. What kind of photographs say that fiction cannot? And what can fiction explore, for instance, that a camera can't?
I feel that photography or images, I'll say photos and fiction, can broach the same subjects. I think the difference is how it's received by the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, when you see a photograph, you get an immediate reaction because you see everything at once. And so it may resonate differently as opposed to reading fiction where you have to spend the time reading the description. You may react to it differently. It's a slower pace. So I feel like with photography, you get a lot of information all at once. And whereas fiction, you're spending more time getting the information, so it may feel differently to you. So I think you can explore the same topics. It's just going to have a different feel.
Right. Well, of course, just reading alone is going to end up giving you your own picture in your own mind.
Exactly.
So it could be very different from what is taken. But what it brings to mind for me is, those great war stories that used to be shown in magazines, where you'd have a great picture that really told it all, but underneath it was the story, the full in-depth. So you got the best of both worlds in that case, which was pretty good. How do you think your professional photography career has shaped the way you tell stories?
Two of the things that I look for when I'm photographing someone is lighting, because that can make or break a photo. And I look at the ease of the person. So if I'm doing portraits, I look to see how they stand. I want it to be as authentic as possible. And so because of that, I do pay attention a lot to people's mannerisms and I pay attention to lighting. And so when I'm writing, I feel like, because I do a lot of writing in my head first, it's very easy for me to imagine the story unfolding like a movie and picture them. So I feel like photography has enhanced this skill.
Yeah, that's how I write as well. I'm very visual.
Yeah.
Easier. It just comes to me. It's so much easier to see the scenes and the sets before I go to print,
Yeah.
That's how it works. What are you looking for when you photograph someone?
I look to make sure that they are comfortable enough. I'm one of those photographers. I specialize with people who don't feel comfortable in front of the camera. I'm one of those people myself. I've never been comfortable in front of the camera. So I have a lot of compassion. So when people hire me, it's usually because it's at the last minute they needed this photo 2 weeks ago for their publicist or for whoever. And, when they come in, I try to make sure they feel settled, that the way they're standing, smiling, that it feels as authentic to them as possible, because that's when you get the best photos, in my opinion. And my goal is to illuminate beauty, because I see that everyone has something beautiful about them.
It's a real art. There's no doubt about it. Capturing
Absolutely.
the perfect. You've said you want people to be seen and heard. How does that idea, guide your creative work?
I think it guides my work in that it inspires me to explore topics that are not usually discussed or considered taboo. For example, with Tattletales, a lot of those people didn't have a chance to share their story. And it was really cool to see them open up and get energized because someone was taking an interest in their body art. And so I think it inspires me to reach out to people because people do want to feel seen and heard.
Yeah, very much so. It's very unique. So when you perform, as a cellist now, the Scottsdale Philharmonic, to your mind, what does that add to your life, do you think, as an artist?
I always listen to music when I'm writing. Actually, even when I have my photo shoots, unless the person prefers no music, I always have some kind of music playing in the background. It gets me into the mood. Okay. And I think even more so now as a musician, because I'm dealing with the music in a different way. I have a huge appreciation for music and especially movie soundtracks. So I have that playing in the background when I'm working on my stories.
Well, there's no doubt about it then that music has influenced your sense of rhythm, emotion, and of course your storytelling. I suppose there's other authors, when I think about it, if it's in the background, do you think that the style of music that you're listening to can affect how you write?
Yes, absolutely. So depending on the type of story I'm writing, I'll have a different playlist. So I use Pandora a lot. So I have different channels. And it's like, if I'm like the one I'm working on right now, I'm working on another collection. Right. I'm listening to a lot of movie soundtracks.
Okay. And do you have a favorite as a matter of interest?
I really like Audio Machine and Two Steps from Hell. They do a lot of soundtracks for movies. I can't name them off the top of my head, but when you hear them, they're familiar.
I tell you what, to me, without good music, the film may not be what it's supposed to be. I think the film track, I think the soundtrack of a movie is critical, the right soundtrack. Yeah. Your short story collection, The Stories of Our Lives, this one up here on the left or on the right, depending on which way you're looking at it, it centers on ordinary people who live lives that are changed by unexpected events. So what draws you to those turning points, per se?
I think I was inspired because, especially, during COVID, I realized how quickly our lives can change. And so when I went back to these stories that I had written and I was editing them and reworking, and I actually added a few more, right. I was really, touched by the subject matter, like things that can seem bad at first, and then you have to figure out how to get through that challenge, and something comes out of it. And so in every story, there is something, like in Bundle Save, the first story, Mitch sees this laundromat. He becomes so suspicious and it like consumes him. And then, what happens when he finally visits, it changes his life. And I'm just always interested to see how our lives can change so quickly.
You began, some of the stories, didn't you, years ago, and then you returned to finish the book later. I mean, what brought you back to these characters and themes, do you think? Was it maturity? Life had gone on for you? And
life definitely. I think the older you get, I think it gives you more tools in your toolbox, so to speak, because you've experienced more things and you become wiser. Yeah. And the reason I returned to these stories was that in 2020, when the whole world kind of shut down, I wasn't able to work. The orchestras were shut down. Yeah. I had no outlet. And it was my mother's suggestion. She said, why don't you go back to your short stories and, take a look at them, see what you can do. And I thought, well, that's good. Because I have to be productive. I want to be creative. I didn't want to just dwell in my worries. And I did it. It really, I have to say the arts have saved my life because they've given me an outlet and a sense of purpose. And it was such a great escape working on these stories and focusing on other people's problems.
It's one of those things, that came out of COVID. You talk to so many people and they will say to you and tell you and share with you that although it was so bad and we all went through a tough time, in one way or another, we all suffered. But at the end of the day, some good did come out of it for people. Per medium of your case. I mean, you wouldn't have done what you've done without the opportunity, that time to be able to do it. It's the same for me. My business was a studio downtown where it was a lot of clients that were doing their own podcasts and shows that I produce, but not one of them would come to the studio during COVID. I lost them all. And I wonder why, but I put sheets up, I put plastic up. It didn't matter. It's the fear, regardless. So it pushed me to online producing and to do shows, like TV, but do them online. And that's what I love doing. It's my wheelhouse. So that bit of good came out of it. But being sick with it, thank you. I don't want that again. That was horrible. And a few other things I could tell you about. Your fiction draws, Brandy, inspiration from conversations, life experiences, and even shows like what used to be one of my favorites called The Twilight Zone. How do everyday observations become stories for you? There's writers listening to this. You're helping them. Okay?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll be driving and I'll see something and it'll be curious to me. And I'll just start filling in the blanks. Like one story, it's not in this collection. I'm working on a new collection and I was watching the news and I saw this model, being draped with material. And I just had this thought like, oh, she makes the perfect mannequin. And that just gave me a story right away. So I think it's just having fun with it, and if you're inspired by something, for example, I used to watch these shows like What on Earth, The Unexplained, with my parents, and sometimes they explain mysteries and some of them don't have a solution or an answer. So if it interests me, I'll think, what could be it? What could be the answer? And that can inspire a story.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good, because we try to, on this show, give tips and clues to wannabe writers. And it's interesting whom you talk to, how their style is, how they started, what they didn't do, which way they attacked it, which way they went at it. And everybody's different. Some, you could never have music. You can't have a sound. They'll go and hide in the mountain and hope to God they can write there quiet, Others, yeah. So even when your work explores life's challenges, there still seems to be a hope in it, Why is that important to you as a writer, do you think?
I think it's important because life is hard. And we all experience loss, we experience challenges. And there are times, especially when you're in it, you can't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And, I have felt that way. I know other artists and people have felt that way too. And I think it's important to know that you never know what's around the corner. There's always something that can change, like we've experienced with COVID, for example. So that's why it's important for me to have that topic kind of meshed in with my stories, because I do think it's important to have hope and never give up. Your story's never over.
That's right. No, you should never give up. Never, 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 ever give up. That's your complete collection of works there. Telltales, tattoo stories and portraits, the stories of our lives, and mannequins, stories of the first supermodel. And they're all available on Amazon. Of course, Amazon, never heard of it. How long's this been going? Dear, oh dear, oh dear. What did we used to do? Good old bookstores, nothing. You'd go in and sit down and so on. But then again, there's so much different stuff. That's your website, yes?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And if I went on that site, I'm going to see all different sorts of stuff, information. Can I actually order if I wanted to on that? Does that take you through to Amazon?
No, that's specifically for my service-based photography. So yes, the best place to find my books are on Amazon.
So you're service-based. You go all over America, or are you basically Arizona-based?
Mainly local. I have done a few trips here and there, but typically I'm hired for studio work.
Right. Well, are you getting much these days, or are you affected like a lot of people I talk to?
It has been affected somewhat, especially with, smartphones being so good with cameras, but I still get hired because, for example, someone wanted me to photograph their birthday party because they didn't want everyone on their phone documenting everything.
Right.
So, yeah, so I still get work, but yeah, I definitely have seen a change, but it gives me more opportunities to work on my own projects, which I'm now selling. So it's worked out.
Interesting. And what do you use as a matter of interest? I mean, lighting and a heavy duty camera on tripod. This is all your equipment, right?
Yeah, I don't usually use a tripod, but I have a large digital camera, and I do use flash photography, or sometimes I'll use natural photography if it's an outdoor shoot.
You've got to have a lot of patience, don't you, be a photographer?
Yeah, but I love it. I love my clients, and everyone's been so wonderful. So it's always a joy to work with people.
Well, the proverbial question is, what about bubbas? Do you do many babies?
I did. Periodically, I'll get a request for a family portrait where there is a baby, and they're so cute. Sometimes it's hard to get them to look at the camera, or they'll look a little angry with me because I'm disturbing them. But I just have a good time and try to make them laugh, and it's.
I would have thought that'd be quite challenging, if they go into a cry fit or something else. Never mind. That's the way it is. Well, good on you. It's been lovely speaking with you, Brandy, and I'll get you to stick around if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely.
I think for 60 seconds after. Stay online, so make sure we download everything and everything's good. The books are fantastic, and I think they're going to sell, and they already are. So well done. They're all on Amazon, but she does other work, as you know, so maybe you'd like to hire her out for doing some photography. And good luck with your music, too. That's not a bad feat. You didn't start till what? You were an adult, you said.
Yeah.
Here you are playing in the orchestra. Wow, not bad.
It's never too late.
Good job. Brandy Isadora. Brandy Isadora. What a lovely name. Thanks for being on the show, Brandy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
There you go. So what an interesting lady. What an interesting lady. Interesting books. Driving along and you see mannequins being done. I'll have a look at that. Because when you do think about it, I mean, as a kid, I thought that was spooky. But when you think about it, she's rather clever. So that was different. We've had kiddies books, we've had fiction, non-fiction, we've had memoirs, and there's going to be a lot more, I hope. Go to nothinglikeagoodbook.com. I do charge a fee. Within budget, I'll help you because I have to pay people. It's not just the interview, it's all the editing afterwards, and then we market profusely, which means it goes on a lot of platforms. All right? Both audio, both visually, and I also do a lot of other stuff as well. Okay? And that costs money. So that's the only reason I do that. Would appreciate you supporting on the YouTube channel. Okay? That would help greatly in the meantime. Thanks for joining the show.